I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. And in this particular time when I was born, it was in Montebello, but we lived in Pico Rivera. And I was up to the age of 11. And my surroundings were pretty much, drug dealers and gang members. And finally, my parents separated, and I moved to the West Side with my new family. I'll start with a good memory, which was the first time that I sung on stage with Saul Viera el Gavilancillo. I was 8 years old, and this was in 1996 in a place called Latin Village. After that, it was a nightclub called El Rodeo de Pico Rivera. And so that was a really cool moment for me growing up, because he was, after Chalino Sanchez passed away, he was like the one who was stepping into those boots. And I got to sing on stage with him. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I knew he was somebody big because he was like the main event for New Year's Eve. And so that was a great memory for me. My dad's the one that always introduced corridos to me. I would listen to Chalino growing up because where we lived, everybody was Mexican for the most part. A lot of people there from Sinaloa, Durango, Michoacan, like different places. And my dad was the one who would play corridos. And some of the guys that they would sing about, in this case, like Jorge Cázares, who Chalino made a corrido of, these were people who were like my dad's friends. And so that's how I grew up, listening to music from my dad. So one of the other memories is I was around the same age, like 8, I would say. And I was in my dad's office, like something like this. There was a window like that, covered with, it was draped. And then there was a glass door. And I remember I walked into the room and said hi to my dad and his friends. And I saw a little Tonka truck, a yellow Tonka truck that was outside. I could see it through the glass and through the drapes. So I said, "What's up?" to my dad. And I started walking that way. When I cracked open the door, I looked to the right of me, and on the floor there was a guy crawling with 2 Uzis on each hand. He had a bandana, and the other guy had a ski mask, and he was crouched with an AK. And they were both walking. When I opened the door, they didn't know who was coming out. But by what happened, you can tell that they were approaching the place cautiously, because they knew people there were probably armed, or they were expecting that. And when I opened the door, they just started firing. Brrr, ta, 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 ta. You just start hearing. But because I was little, all the bullets just above me. They thought it was an adult, so they just started spraying the door. And my uncle, who was sitting by the door, reached over, grabbed me, threw me on the floor, and jumped on top of me. I could just see like glass on the floor just bouncing like little diamonds. And everything seemed like it just started going slow, and like you couldn't hear anything no more. It was like everything went, like I went deaf, like I couldn't hear nothing. And then everything happened so fast. And the guys, they hit the door, but after that they just booked. So then after that I just hear my dad, my son, where's my son? And that's when the hearing came back. And then boom, it just seemed like everything started moving fast again. And then that's one of my childhood memories growing up. There was a lot of violence, that kind of violence, There was gang banging violence, but then there was this type of violence, So between those two things, that's my childhood memories. It was almost kind of normal to a point, because a lot of things weren't censored for me, like a weapon, certain drugs. I didn't touch most drugs growing up because I was taught at an early age, look, this is this is that, this is that, this is made with this and this and that, and you don't touch that. You stay away from that. But like growing up, like I said, seeing weapons was normal. Seeing drugs was normal. It was always talked about, and it wasn't like it was something. I thought it was normal. I didn't ask my dad, but if I think I could remember, I think I was asking why they wanted to kill him. But like I said, I think it was just everything was normal to me. But the way I think it would affect me, I guess I didn't pay attention till later. When you start tripping out about certain things, like I used to have a habit when I would, go into my home or wherever I was at, and I would make sure that the doors were locked, that everything was locked. I didn't want to, leave a door cracked open, because I would think like somebody's gonna pop out and do the same thing that happened. It didn't make sense till later on in my life, when my godfather was also murdered in Culiacan, Sinaloa, where certain things I'm like, oh, that's what it is the trauma. So I think that that's how it affected me, through those kind of events, that I realized later on as a young adult. I was like, oh damn, like I have PTSD. And then when I think about the stuff that happened, I'm like, that's definitely wasn't something normal. At age 8, my life was already at risk of getting hit by bullets. And later on in life, other things that happened kind of connected the dots. I think I was 12 when my parents finally separated, and then we moved to the West Side. And it was a culture shock, because there was there was Crip gangs, blood gangs, Mexicans, then Central Americans, which was a trip to me, because I would hear people speaking Spanish and I'd be like, why doesn't he speak Spanish like I do? They sound different. Or then I would see, the old ladies outside of the churches flipping what I thought was pancakes, and they weren't pancakes, they were pupusas. And so it was a culture shock for me, and it was very different. By then, we moved from that environment of how I grew up with the gangs and the drug dealers, and we moved to the West Side. And my life was a little bit different now, growing up, seeing my dad working construction and doing different kind of things. And that's where I met my friends. I met the kids in the neighborhood. By this time, though, I had a stepmom. I had siblings, that I didn't know really about. So getting adapted into a new family, leaving my parents separating, my mother going her way, my father going his way, it was also like something new to me. I always felt like an outsider for a long time. For many years to come, I felt like an outsider. And my big brother, who is from a big neighborhood in Los Angeles, he would tell me, I don't want you to be from a gang, but if you ever decide to join a gang, it's got to be my gang. And so that kind of kept me away for a while from joining any neighborhoods. So I was really into sports. I really liked boxing a lot. I liked running. And I remember I used to time myself from the house when they'll be like, hey, can you go get some tortillas? I'll be like, all right, cool. So I'd time myself from the house to the marquetita, and I'll just like book. And I'll be like, damn, I'm fast, And every time I would pass by, I would see my homie Spanky in the corner. And he a big dude, chubby dude, always right there. And then the other homies in the back. And then he was the one that always had like a bag of chips or something in his hands, And he'd be like, hey, check it out. But I used to just run past him too, And then he would try every time I would pass by. I'd just speed, come back. And one day, I started getting into it more with my stepmom. It was kind of hard to adapt because she was young. She didn't fit the role of a mom or my mom. So we would talk bad to each other. And things got a little bit violent. And that's when I didn't want to be in the house no more. And so finally one day I just walked across the street. And this time, like, my homie didn't have to wave me down or nothing. He was actually just looking at me surprised, like, damn, this fool's finally coming over here. I met with the homies. I ended up, fighting one of them, and that's how we became friends. And from there on, like, that became my family. And that's who I felt safe with. That's who I felt seen by. That's who I felt protected and loved by. And so that gang became my gang. And that led into what that normally leads to, which is losing lives, fighting, and shootouts. And that's really what led for me to leave to Sinaloa. 13, 14, 15, I was already with my homies in the neighborhood. You know, I would carry a weapon with me every day. And I learned the power of energy at that time. Prior to that, like I said, I was into sports. I used to like to skateboard, and it was good, like it wasn't until I started carrying a gun that I felt like more people wanted to fight me. Cops would chase me. Like I was bringing that energy into my life. So like I said, finally one day I said, you know what? I want to be like the people that I grew up with, but I want to be more powerful. Now that I was, 14 and I put the skateboard away and I was 15, like my mind started going there. I said, I want to be like them, but bigger. And that's when I learned also the power of manifestation, because I would think that way. I would think like, okay, cool, I'm going to start by selling, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. Like I had goals to go into that world, not knowing. So I learned the power of energy and the power of manifestation. And by the age of like 15, 16, I got into something that led for me into leaving the country. And when I left, I went to Sinaloa because, like I said, my mother was there now. And, I was leaving the gang life and whatever and going into Sinaloa, not knowing I was going into the I don't want to say the real gangs, but the actual, gangs. It was very different for me. Sinaloa was a huge. It was another culture shock, but in a different way, because it was where I saw gold-plated AKs for the first time. It's where I saw men with real power. It's where I saw police officers mingling with other gangsters in certain parties. And that's where I really it was just a huge culture shock to see the narco cultura and how the narcos move in Sinaloa. It was very, very, very powerful amongst artists and everything like that. So I was 16. Mind you, I had already been manifesting to be bigger than the people that I grew up with. So when I got to Sinaloa, I met some very powerful people at that time. One of them took a liking to me and took me under his wing. And things were just starting to move fast over there. Like, 1 second I'm working at a car wash with my friends. Next second I got a pistol on my hip and I'm with the person who was controlling the city at that time. And he's just like, hey, you stay right here with me and you're going to see where we go. So almost by the age of 17, I was going to join the organization in Sinaloa. And I was told that I would be officially put on payroll. But I needed to come to the United States and fix. I got a DUI when I was about 14, 15. So I had to come back to the United States to fix that DUI so that I can be able to cross both countries whenever I needed to. Obviously, in this case, they might have errands they need me to do, and I need to be able to cross without a problem. So I said, fine, we're going to do this officially after I go and fix that. Cool. That was the last conversation I had with this person. And I came to LA at 17, and I went to court, which was the Inglewood court, to fix that DUI. And I got a court date. So they said, you know what? They don't actually... It turned into a warrant. I mean, they said, we're going to give you a court date. It's a DUI. Come back in 3 months. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. Well, I guess I'm stuck in LA for 3 months. At this time, my parents had already moved to South Central, to the east side. And that's where I met my friends there. While I was there for 3 months, I met some of my buddies there who would sell bootleg CDs, bootleg DVDs. Because, in the east side, you got, San Pedro and 22nd, say, down here. It's only a skip away from downtown. So most of the homies in the neighborhood would always go over there. And some in particular who would sell, all the bootleg stuff. And I remember my homeboy Pablito, he's the one who put me onto to the DVD stuff because he would sell bootleg CDs, and I started selling bootleg DVDs, and it was quick money because everything was going fast. I'll sit in a corner and I'll have my bag with all the DVDs, all the new movies at that time, and in like probably 2 hours I would come out with like $600 cash. And I would go and cash out and get another badge and send my other homie and be like, yo, you go get some money. And we were young, 17, making a lot of cash, and we would just use it, drink, have fun, go kick it with girls, buy clothes, and I was doing that up until my court date. I ended up getting into it with somebody or some people in a restaurant in South Central, and I ended up being charged for attempted murder that day. But the man who I was going to shoot, the gun jammed, and I was able to stay in the juvenile court system. I get arrested, I go and do my time, and my first year incarcerated, I was able to get my hands on the phone to call Sinaloa. And I called Sinaloa, and I called my friend. That was the first thing I did. I called him, and he's like, hey, man, he's like, where you been at? He's like, man, everybody's asking about you. He's like, why didn't you come back? What's going on? And he's like, hold on, my dad wants to talk to you. His dad gets on the phone, and he's like, compadre, ¿cómo está? He's like, yo no sé dónde está. I don't know where you're at, and I don't know what happened. I don't know why you didn't come back, but I'm glad you're not here. He's like, your friend, and my friend is the person who's supposed to be my boss at that time. He's like, your friend, he was like, he came out on the front page of the newspaper. They found him wrapped up in sheets on the side of the road. And there was an 18-year-old passenger in the truck that they were driving, shot in the head. I had just turned 18. So he was like, I don't know where you're at and why you didn't come back. He was like, but that could have been you. And that's where things started to shift for me while I was incarcerated. Things started to shift for me, and I was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that the guy that I was going to end at that restaurant, and I had him face to face, and I have the gun pointed to his face, and I have 32 hollow tips in my gun, and I'm ready to shoot this guy, my gun jams. I try to shoot him twice. The gun jammed twice. Then I left Sinaloa right in time before the person who was supposed to be my boss was found wrapped in sheets on the side of a road. And the 18-year-old kid who could have been me was shot in the head. So that's when life really started to hit me. And I was 7, like I said, I had just turned 18. And I'm like, well, I'm here. And all of that happened. I got 3 major problems in my life. One of them is I didn't finish school. I don't have a high school diploma. I have a substance abuse because I developed one after my godfather was murdered in Sinaloa, which was a huge impact in my life too. That's when I started consuming cocaine and alcohol to numb the pain. I had a substance abuse problem and I had an anger problem. So those 3 things I had, and I got there and I was like, you know what? I need to start working on myself. And I wasn't worried about the inmates or anybody else. I always knew how to take care of myself, or I've always been in leadership positions. So it's not like I was scared of anybody there and if anything came my way, I would take care of it. It was the fact that they were trying to sentence me to 32 years to start. But like I said, fortunately, I was able to stay in the juvenile system. They dropped the case to assault with a firearm, and they ended up giving me 8 years, which was juvenile life, and the possibility of parole in 2 years. But I got in trouble, and I ended up paroling in 3 years. So while I was there, I started working on myself. And the first thing I did was I need to enroll myself into school. I need to, start showing up to school, class. I need to start reading. And this lady, she was like, what do you want to read about? And I was like, I don't know. I want to read about things that help my mind, And she was like, oh, self-help books. And I was like, yeah, self-help books. All right, cool. She was like, my son likes a lot of those books. I'll bring you some when I get a chance. She was like, but for now, you should go read the Proverbs in the Bible. And I did, and I remember being there and like reading the Proverbs, and I was thinking to myself, like, damn, like nobody knows about this stuff. Like, this is some game right here, you know, like this is real. Like, I started reading more books that empowered me more. And then I got into like anger management classes. I did get in trouble for making pruno, because, you know, everything else I was working on, but the substance abuse was kind of crazy. It was hard for me. I'm like, man, I need a drink, you know? And so I got caught doing pruno, making pruno, and I ended up getting extra time for that too. And so then from there I went to Chino, to YTS Chino. And right there I can feel the energy of all the inmates. And, you know, it was just a very like dark place. It was racial. It was less about gangs, more about race. But I started reading. And when I got there, half of the cell block already knew me. And so they were like one of the first ones next to me. One of the homies from Long Beach is like, hey, Jimmy. He's like, hey, sing that one corrido about your padrino. I start singing. Then you hear all the homies waking up over there, you know. And, hey, Jimmy, hey, sing this one corrido. And that's when my music journey again started to like spark up. And so I started writing music about the homies and their stories. You know, like I had a homie from Compton who told me he had 7 brothers and most of them died. But I remember one thing in particular he would say. He's like, most of them died by a AK-47. And, you know, he would tell me how they were shot. Most of them were shot in the head. This one was shot many times. And those stories were intriguing to me, you know, because it was like similar to a lot of the things that I grew up seeing. So that I started writing these stories into corridos. And I wrote for a couple of the homies, and it just started spreading out. So I bought myself a typewriter. They were selling typewriters in there for like $300. I bought one and I started writing my stories and my corridos. And one day I was telling a story to one of the inmates about when I got, you know, shot at when I was 8. They were trying to kill my dad. They almost shot me. And when I finished, he was like, damn, fool. He was like, that shit was like a movie. And that night I went to my bunk and I was thinking to my head like, damn, man, that shit sounded like a movie. And I was thinking to myself like, yeah, but that was my life. And the following day, the same person encouraged me. He's like, hey, you know, I was thinking about you were telling me, bro. He's like, and I listened to everything you talk about. He's like, you should start writing these stories down. And that's kind of what sparked that. And it was my homie Leonardo Silva, who I talk about a lot in my corridos, who brought me to a creative writing class called Inside Out Writers. And that's where I started writing creative writing. And then I started writing music for the homies. And that kept me busy for a long time until I got out. Finally, you know, 3 years came up and I was getting ready to parole. However, I needed 2 more months of schooling to finish. I needed 2 more months of credits so that I can get my high school diploma. And everybody was excited for me because they're like, damn, Jimmy, you're going to go home. Except I wasn't done with my diploma. So I said, I can't do all this time and not come home with a diploma. So I told my parole officer, tell him I'm not ready. Tell him I need 2 more months. And then the parole board is, and for those who may or may not know what the parole board is, those are the people who decide whether you go home or you stay. And they said, okay, tell him to come back in 3 months. And I was like, damn, I probably pissed them off, you know? And I remember my homeboy Vampiro from Compton, he was like, damn, Jimmy, he was like, what's wrong with you? Why would you ask him for more time? Like, everybody was bugged out. They thought that I was crazy for asking for more time. But I was like, I want to go to college when I get home. 3 months came up. I had my diploma. I went up to board. I told them what was my reason behind that. They were impressed. I told them my trajectory there, everything. And the first person said, you know what? I grant him parole. I grant him parole and I grant him parole. And I was a free man. I remember they gave me a little check, a $10 check or some crazy number. and they gave me a ticket. They gave me a ticket to the Greyhound station, and so they took me there, dropped me off. They said, "You're a free man. Figure it out." So I'm on my way to Los Angeles. I came back to Los Angeles at the Greyhound station, and my PO, who was gonna pick me up, was there. And I was like, "Damn, nothing has changed. The city's still loud. It's still crazy over here. There's still like," as I was going to my PO office, I could see all the different neighborhoods tagged up on all the different blocks and everything. So I finally made it home, and right away I got a job, got into a relationship, and went to college. But when I went to college, mind you, I stopped doing music because I didn't want to somehow go back into that world. So I didn't do that. So I went to college, and that's where I started to study cinema and theater. Around that same time, Inside Out Writers got in touch with me, and they said, "Hey, man, we want you to come to speak to different schools and some juvenile halls." And that's what I did like the first 2 years. And I went to multiple high schools and middle schools and prison, juvenile halls, including Rikers Island in New York. As I was doing that, I was busy with boxing. I was busy with college. However, I sucked with acting. I was terrible. I was a terrible actor. And the professor would say, "Hey, you need to go find a monologue." So I would go to the store where they have all the monologues, and I'd be reading these stories, and I'm like, "Damn, who wrote these stories? Like, this is not how we talk." And I started searching the writers up, and sure enough, it was a Jewish guy from like New York. And I'm like, "Bro, this is crazy. I already suck at acting. I can't read something that I don't like. I'm going to be even worse." So I suck bad. And I remember my professor was like, in one of my acting classes, "Look, Jimmy, this is the final." He's like, "Look, kid," he's like, "I see it in you, man." He's like, "You got it." He's like, "Look, if you pass, if you give me something good, I'm going to give you a B and I'm going to pass you. If not, I'm going to have to fail you." He's like, you got it." And so that day I was so mad because I didn't want to go back to that store one more time and read another book. And so I went home and I wrote. About a time that I was being interrogated in Culver City. And I wrote from that perspective. Except when it was time to do my presentation, I wasn't the kid being interrogated. I was the officer interrogating the kid. So I came in dressed, tie, trench coat, dressing shoes, my hair combed, everything. And that off the top, when I came out to the stage, everybody was like, "God, what the," they were probably expecting a young gangster, a hoodlum, whatever. And that just blew his brains, and he was like, "Wow." Somebody else came up and they're like, "Hey, you know what? You should go audition for the theater academy and try to get in there." She was like, "You're actually really good at this." And I did. I went to go audition to the theater academy, and they told me I had to do 2 monologues. I was like, "Damn, well, I have this one." I was like, "Well, I guess I got to write another one." And I wrote it. And then, I remember they asked me, like, "Who was it by?" And I just threw a name that I read from another place over there. And they looked at me kind of confused. These are old professors. They're old professors. Like, you're like, "Huh? That's the guy that wrote." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's something like that. That was him." And they gave me a pass. Yeah. They gave me a pass. And I got accepted into the theater academy. So I started studying theater and cinema at the same time, which taught me a lot of what I know. But my life really changed when I met my mentor right around that time, Virgil Williams, who was a staff writer on a TV show called Criminal Minds at that time. I met him through Inside Out Writers. It was a mentor-mentee program, and it changed my life. And I would say this to anybody. I would encourage you that if you're somebody that is in a position to mentor somebody, mentor them, because it can change their life. I know my mentor changed my life. And he made me believe that I could become the person that I am today. I remember walking into Criminal Minds at Coyote Studios in Burbank. Because he told me, he was like, "Hey, do you want an internship?" And I was like, what's the internship? He's like, never mind. He's like, can you commit to like, coming to the studio and da da da? I was like, yeah. He's like, all right. He's like, you lucky, right? He's like, a lot of people are applying for this position. And I was like, yeah. And he gave me the opportunity. And I went into Criminal Minds, and I got to see the whole process. He was a writer, so we were in the writer's room. And I got to see how an episode was written, put together, approved, and then go out and shoot it. And I did that for about 3 months, and that changed my life. Because the first day we walked into the studio, we jumped out of his car, nice Audi. We pull up into a parking spot with his name on it. Mind you, he's an important writer at that time. Before we walked in, he's like, hey, look, kid. He's from Chicago. He's like, look, kid. He's like, before we go in there, he's like, I want you to know, I want you to keep your head up. Okay? I want you to listen. I want you to know that you belong here just as much as everybody else you're going to meet today. I want you to know that you belong here. And if there's any problems, you come talk to me. And man, I swear, like, that gave me wings, and it gave me all the confidence that I needed. So I learned a lot there, and that's kind of how I got into acting. I started doing the background acting. From there, I just started working my way up to becoming part of the union. And it took me a very long time because I still dealt with like addiction and like lifestyles and everything. And it wasn't until I lost 5 of my close friends for a murder. They all went away and I was left alone. And that's when I was like looking around like, damn, bro, are you going to waste your talent or are you going to do something about it? You've seen everything that has happened and you're still here. You better do something with it. And that's when I started taking responsibility and I started working hard. I met my son's mom, who we ended up marrying at some point. I met her and I got sober for the next 6 years. And I became part of the union on a show called This Fool on Hulu. I was already SAG eligible. But finally, when I got there, they were like, my manager was like, hey, you need to go with SAG and become part of the union or they're going to pull the contract. So I became part of the union, and that just really shifted everything for me. My son's mom and we ended up separating at some point. I would say that was part of our journey. Me becoming sober, meeting her, getting married, having a child, staying focused, staying diligent, going to AA meetings, going to church, being loyal to one person. Like, that was my journey to get to where I'm at. So when we finally separated, I said, you know what? I am grateful for that time, and I feel like I got more work to do. But in this case, it's like, it's unfortunate, but we can't do it together. But I say all of that to say that even through that, I still managed to be sober, and I'm still sober, and I'm doing it day by day and putting in the work and staying disciplined. I go to the gym, I read, I write, I meditate, I go to church, I mentor, I rehearse every single day for music. I did the acting, got myself into the union, and then finally one day, I said, you know what? If I'm gonna mentor, which is very interesting that my mentee is sitting in this room, this is where I'm going to transition into the music. I remember we would go out to the mountains as he was boxing. I'd take him out to the mountains. We go eat breakfast, then go eat lunch, and then, drop him off. And I was thinking like, damn, I had another young homie who hit me up like, yo, Jimmy, can you meet? Da-da-da. Cool. And go take him to breakfast and then take him to lunch and then go to the boxing gym. And I remember thinking like, damn, bro, like if I'm going to be doing this shit, I need more money. Like, these meals add up. This gas adds up. I need more money. I was like, bro, the acting is like, I mean, when it hits, it's going to give me. But right now, it's like only giving me so much. fuck, what else can I do? And then I just heard the word in my head, like music. So what about music? And I was like, yeah, what about music, huh? And I was like, damn, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to start singing about the old stuff I used to sing about, you know, the organizations. And I said, look, bro, I'm going to sing about what I know, and that's about the gang culture, the narco culture I grew up, Los Angeles, the people who I was incarcerated. I'm going to sing about what I know. That's why I have songs like Prison War, El Cholo Narco, La Cuna, Born and Raised in Los Angeles, Leonardo Silva. That's why I have these songs of these people, of where I grew up, of what I know. And I said, and if I got to die behind that shit, I'm going to stand behind what I'm saying, because it's for a greater purpose. Because I know my heart and my earnings and everything that I'm doing is to bring hope to the hopeless, to provide for the youth, to give back to them, to be a mentor, to be a role model. And if I'm gonna have problems over that shit, then I'm willing to stand on that. And then my other little voice said, bro, just watch what you say. And I was like, all right, cool. Right? So then I said, you know what? First, actually, let me talk to God. And I remember I prayed and I said, God, you know my heart and you know what I want to do. If music is for me and I'm supposed to be doing that again, allow me to be able to write. Let me write a song. Let me come up with a song. Mind you, it had been 10 years that I didn't write anything. Allow me to write what I want to write about. Allow me to write a song, and if that's what it is, if you allow me to do that, then I'll know that that's a sign. And one day I was sitting in the car, and then the song came up, the first song. And I mentioned this in an interview. De la noche a la mañana, dicen que se hizo un artista. Tarara, 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 parara, parara. And I'm like, oh shit. This is a song, like God's letting me write again. So I wrote this, I finished the entire song, and it felt like how it felt back then. Because to me, it was like, this is a gift. Like, you can't write just music like that. Music is very powerful, and you got to catch it. You know, to write a song, you can't just sit down, I'm going to write a song. Like, this comes from a higher place. So I wrote that song, and then I wrote another one. I said, I got you, God. I heard you. I'm going to do music again. And that's when I started doing music. I put out my first song, I think El Pistolero, which he was also in the video, young, background, boxer. And that one went viral. And, you know, I knew I needed to polish up my voice. I knew I needed to do certain things, but like I trusted myself. I'm like, everything that I talk about is me. Can nobody take that from me? People can criticize my voice, the way that I sing, whatever. Y'all can't criticize who I am, where I come from, what I talk about. This is true to me. So it's kind of hard for a hater to even hate. You know what I'm saying? So on social media and everything, like, people really like accepted it. A lot of people didn't, but either way, they're like, you know, man, this guy, man, his voice is kind of like trash, but like, it's dope. And I'm like, what kind of fucking comments are those, man? Are you crazy, bro? Like, yeah, thanks, bro, thanks. And but you know, a lot of people would relate. The people who were not heard.
Bad. I think they were just not used to that.
Right.
They weren't expecting that from you.
Because I brought a voice from the 90s into what's right now. So they liked it because they would hear their parents listening to people with voices like me. But to the new generation, it was like, yo, that's kind of different. I don't know, you know? And then I remember this white girl, West Hollywood, one of my friends, she was like, you hold a microphone like a rapper. She's like, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds good. No, I swear. And then when a black girl said that, I said, you know what's dope? I'm getting the attention of different people. And that's dope. And so, to say the least, music started doing good for me. And I said, fuck it, let's do it. And I'm doing the acting, the singing, and the modeling, which I've done stuff. The most recent things that I did was I did something for Adidas not long ago. And prior to that, I did some other things. Then Same thing with when I became part of the union. I did Hulu, and then I did, commercial with Verizon and another commercial, and I started seeing my residuals, and I started being able to pay rent for a whole year, 2 years off of these residuals. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I guess I am an artist, like this is kind of working. And so every day I am grateful. Every day I am grateful. I didn't think about modeling. I'm like, I model, and then I started seeing the residuals from Adidas and the skincare and all of this stuff, and I'm like, okay, it's working. So I started taking that money while still at the same time working. I ended up working in production behind the scenes as a set dresser in the art department, and that really leveled my game up, because here I am dressing sets for Beyonce, Justin Bieber, Alicia Keys, Bad Bunny. And it just gave me so much knowledge, but I understood. That's when I felt I was fully aligned. I said, I'm doing what God has given me the gift to do. And I'm here, and I got Beyonce over there smiling. And I've worked with Jennifer Lopez, and I got Justin Bieber saying what's up to me. I'm like, bro, I'm supposed to be here. And that's where I started really owning this stuff. And when I started doing the music stuff, and I had people, when I'm driving on the freeway in Los Angeles and people will honk, I had a fucking FedEx driver, big ass truck driving, and I'm on my way to run some errands, and he's like, babe, 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 babe. And I'm thinking like, God damn, this motherfucker. He's like, hey, bro. And I'm thinking he might tell me he likes the truck that I'm driving. I don't know. He's like, hey, I love your music, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. He's like, man, it's badass. And that's when I started realizing, like, damn, I'm aligned and I'm in my purpose. So I just need to stick to the script, keep doing what I'm doing, and use the gifts that I was given to inspire others. And that's really my mission, That's really my mission. I'm here, and I know God gave me an opportunity, many opportunities, so that I can be able to help others. And I have been doing that. I got a lot of my friends who are working in the industry too, and I continue to give as much as I can, and sometimes more. And that's really my mission. Su compa Jimmy Valdez, el artista. We just did Making Changes, para que lo esperen.